Hey, my name is Bret and my project is on handling college sexual assault cases. First on sexual assault is that it has some pretty eye-catching numbers in there. It's flat out scary. Like 1 out of every 5 women in college are victims of some sort of sexual assault, and around 23% of those same cases are actually dropped due to a lack of evidence, and around 8 to 10% are actually it's been fabricated by the victims. We've seen it before with the Jameis Winston, and we've seen it before with one of the Baylor football players, Sean Newman, that we're going to talk about later on. And 85% of college sexual assault cases actually occur off campus, which is a big deal now because of the new Betsy DeVos rules proposals that some schools be held unaccountable for assaults that occur off their campus and off their property. Number one issue with sexual assault cases is actually that majority of them go unreported. And if you can see the little graph right here, you can see that just around 80%. This is from 2001. Around 80% go around rape for sexual assault will go unreported. But in a recent one, this was 2015, that around 95% of campus sexual assault cases are actually go unreported. And that was a big issue with the Obama era rules that he actually took a step forward on, and we'll talk about that one coming up shortly. And some examples of these, like I said, we have the ones with Baylor and the ones with Jameis Winston. Yeah, this is actually his first one. He was actually involved in two, but the second one occurred when Tampa Bay when he was out of college. But his first one was when he was at Florida State, and he was accused of sexual assault, but ended up being found not guilty. But the alleged victim was still rewarded $950,000 due to the fact that the school failed to follow the proper Title X guidelines, and she sued the school and won her case on that. And the big one we all know about is Baylor. They've had a long history of sexual assault cases, and one of them has to do with one of their fraternity presidents. I can't remember which fraternity it was, but one fraternity president was involved in a rape on campus at a fraternity party, and he was found. He accepted a plea deal and ended up serving no time, but had a big length of probation. And the other one actually occurred within their football program. It was a big ordeal. This began in 2015. On one of their players was, or actually prior to that, they had a big breaking news article about several football players were actually involved in several sexual assault cases, and the first one was Sam Owuchu, and he was sentenced on August 21st, 2015, and was convicted. And it turns out that there was around 17 of their football players that their head coach Art Briles actually covered up all these sexual assault cases. And there's a whole timeline. One of them I said was Sean Oatman, the president of the school, actually covered up the cases too. But again, Sean Oatman, he was one of the ones arrested, and he was actually this past February found not guilty because the victim came out and said she actually made up the whole story and everything just to try to gain publicity. And that's one issue that goes on along with all this, because he was a big time NFL draft prospect at the time it was happening. He was accused and charged after his senior year of Baylor, and he was a potential first round pick in the NFL, and all this happened and ended up ruining his football career up to this point, and completely life-changing event from both parties. But then, the end of all, it came out that Art Briles and the president of the school actually did hide the cases a little bit, and they ended up, both of them lost their jobs, and and Art Briles is still no longer coaching right to this day. And that leads us to the Obama era rules, and these were proposed and enforced in 2011, and it changed for sexual assault cases to use preponderance of evidence, and would be the new statute for sexual assault cases rather than using beyond a reasonable doubt that you see for other cases. And this move shifted the focus to protect the victims and make it easier for them to bring a legitimate case, because, like we said, several of these instances go unreported, and it was to help about with bringing victims the light to come out and give them a stage to speak on. And the following, this is a quote from a 2011 colleague letter, and a school has a responsibility to respond promptly and effectively. If a school knows or reasonably should know about the sexual harassment or sexual violence that creates a hostile environment, the school must take immediate action to eliminate the sexual harassment or sexual violence, prevent its reoccurrence, and address its efforts. So this is clearly a move to help protect the victims and give them more of a platform to speak out on. And there were some criticisms of this. Before I get to that, there was a campaign that was started by Michelle Obama. It was called "It's on Us" campaign that kind of brought light to the unreported sexual assault cases and gave the more victims and the light and stage to come speak out on. That's what it was inspired to do, and that's what Michelle Obama intended for to happen. And it had big impact on several of those lives. But again, there were some criticisms of this, and according to Betsy DeVos, she said the old rules just lacked the basic elements of fairness, meaning that the accused really didn't, she felt like the accused really didn't have a fair chance in this because some were be fabricated, there was really no way for them to tell. And the reason for this is hard to really tell is because it's really mainly just one story versus another, so it's hard to figure out, get evidence from one and evidence from the other and figure it all out. But and Robert Shibley, the fire executive director, has said when the government sprang its 2011 letter of colleges and students without warning, it made it impossible for campuses to serve the needs of victims while also respecting the rights of the accused. And again, sure, these rules were not perfect, but they made strides in the right direction and efforts to be able to bring more hope for the victims' ability for them to hear their cases. And now for the Betsy DeVos revisions and her solutions to all this. Her revision made it far more difficult, which is an already difficult situation to begin with, to put together a case due to her new standard of clear, convincing evidence, which is pretty much follow along with other guidelines for other cases and crimes. And the university did not have to be held accountable if the incident occurred off campus if it wasn't reported to the right authority, which we saw on the first slide. It's a big deal because 85% of these actually occur off campus and off campus apartments or houses or anything. And her new Q&A document allows the school to offer appeal process to both parties, which that was a big step. And it does bring more fairness to the accused in these cases, and which is, again, it's still a step in the right, kind of a step in the right direction, which also makes it a bigger hurdle for the victims to have to overcome in their cases. And there were several criticisms on all this, on the DeVos revisions. I'll just read a couple of them. One of them came from Senator McCaskill, and he said, Secretary DeVos has taken the progress we've made protecting survivors and making our campuses safer and thrown that progress into chaos, referring to the new evidence rule. And Nancy Dutich, professor at University of Virginia, says, in this case, our individual rights framework is really shifting towards the individual's rights of the accused versus the students who are supposed to be protected by Title IX. And the next one, it really speaks volume. It was an actual victim, and her case was heard by the 2011 Obama era rules, and she was a survivor of college sexual assault and showed her displeasure with the new rules by saying that the old rules brought her assaulter to justice by saying that without them, she would have been forced to drop out of school or risk the danger of encountering the offender. And that just speaks a ton of volume when an actual victim comes out and criticizes the new rules of sexual assault. And my response is that I think all the criticisms are fair. She shifted the focus from the help protect the students of the university to the victims of sexual assault of the university to the ones that are actually doing the act of the crime. And to hear a victim come out and say that how the old rules helped her win her case, and that's to really speak volume of what these new rules really stand for. And the biggest issue, as we can all see, is the unreported cases. But these new steps, step back in that area after the Obama era rules took a step forward on this issue. And DeVos kind of, like we saw earlier, kind of took a couple steps backward after Obama took a step forward in this issue. And for conclusion, sexual assault is still a big ongoing issue to this day. Betsy DeVos is allowing the schools to still choose which rules which rules they want to follow. Some like University of Colorado Boulder are actually following the Obama era rules still, and along with several other universities. And the old rules made more sense and helped out with the biggest issue of the unreported sexual assaults. And the new rules, while they do make it fair for all parties, makes the victims have a much larger hurdle to jump to be able to bring a case to court, and when it is brought to court, to be able to win the case. So that's it, and that's my thank you.